Hello and welcome to Brodual. This time we have Genesis. Genesis is a standalone module from the popular Sands of Time mod, also known as Ultimate Deadly Encounters. That's a much bigger mod that covers all areas of random encounters, from interruptions during fast travel to sudden battles in the wild of Skyrim. Genesis is the part that focuses on random encounters for dungeons. One of the biggest complaints about Skyrim is the repetitive nature of its caves and dungeons. Many mods have tried to fix this, whether they add entirely new dungeons to the game for more variety, or tediously move NPCs around so you'll occasionally stumble upon something new. Genesis takes a different approach. It's a dynamic spawner that covers all 200 plus of Skyrim's caves and dungeons. The way it works is by firing a couple of scripts when you first enter the dungeon, and then depending on several factors, it'll spawn in new enemies for you to face. So it's extremely lightweight and provides populated, unique dungeons on the fly. The spawned NPCs are intelligently chosen to ensure a unique experience every single time. It'll take things like the dungeon type, the size, and other objects into account. So you won't all of a sudden find Draugr in a troll's cave, or Falmer in a bandit hideout. The spawn location is also chosen to ensure the new enemies are spread out evenly throughout the dungeon. This is done by scanning the area and avoiding existing enemies. In the mod menu you can set your desired amount of new spawns for both surface and standard dungeons. By default it's set to 10, but we think that's a bit too much for the standard Skyrim experience. But if you're aiming for that hack and slash style of gameplay, then you'll definitely want a higher number. Also, by default the mod will potentially spawn enemies within your field of view, which we found to be a bit jarring, with enemies sometimes appearing out of thin air. We recommend that you set it to spawn something around 5 enemies and untick the option that lets enemies spawn within your field of view, but of course that'll come down to what's right for you. Regardless of your settings, one thing is for sure, the mod will definitely make dungeons harder, and that's where the second part of the mod falls into place. The enhanced treasure features let you dynamically adjust dungeon loot alongside the new spawns. So the harder the dungeon becomes with more enemies, the better loot you receive at the end of it. What's great is that the smart system I mentioned earlier also works with the enhanced treasure. That's because the spawner will search the dungeon for chests and then sometimes spawn a tougher enemy to guard it, which sort of acts as the final boss before you get your reward. Keep in mind that while the mod does a lot for dungeon variety as a whole, the spawns are usually just more of the enemies already in the dungeon, apart from a few rare cases like the enemies guarding chests. So where you'd usually find a dungeon full of standard Draugr, you'll now simply have a dungeon with X more Draugr, depending on what you set in the mod menu. However, you can easily fix that thanks to its compatibility alongside the monster mod and immersive creatures. So if you want enemy variety specifically, then we recommend you pick up at least one of those too. The system still stays smart, so you'll only find Draugr-like creatures in crypts and other appropriate areas, but there'll simply be more types of them. If you want even more variety, then try unticking the option that makes the NPCs stay leveled, but beware of potential one-hit KOs from super high leveled enemies. Overall it's a really simple mod, but it has a pretty big impact on gameplay. As always, if you enjoy any of the mods you use, then be sure to leave endorsements on the mod page. Everything you need can be found down below, and if you're in between playthroughs right now, then you can check out g2a.com for some cheap games, and thanks for watching.